take control of the House in, a month or so? It's obscene to think that Congress is planning to make major legislative changes before Pelosi has to give up the gavel. But as we warned you last week, Democrats are going to try to take advantage of the few weeks remaining to ram through as much sweeping change as possible. Now, in one of the most cynical, swampy manners possible, official Washington wants to sneak legislation through under the cover of the holiday rush and trumped up government shutdown fears. For weeks, the Pentagon has been sending not so subtle messages to Congress that failure to act on the National Defense Authorization Act and the omnibus spending bills puts us at a strategic disadvantage. If the current budget extension extends beyond December, we may be forced to reduce sessions, impairing our ability to meet our missions and our ability to recruit personnel. Well, that's scary. Well, I wonder, were there any policy decisions taken by the Pentagon and the Biden administration that could have led to a recruiting crisis in our military?
Secretary Austin's been very clear that he opposes the repeal of the vaccine mandate, and the president actually concurs with the Secretary of Defense. He continues to believe that all Americans, including those in the armed forces, should be vaccinated and boosted for COVID-19.
And boosted. And another excuse we've heard is that we need more spending to keep up with inflation. Well, I don't know how much time they need to spend on the irony behind that argument, but it seems like the pressure from the White House and the Pentagon is resonating with some Senate Republicans.
I just finished a meeting with the Republican leader about finding a constructive path forward to keep the government funded next fiscal year. We're going to continue negotiations until we get the job done. On funding the government, both sides recognize the importance, so now both sides must chart a path forward together.
Oh, chart a path forward. Now, that line may work in a Nicholas Sparks movie, but it's no way to run a government. The only ones who are optimistic here are the lobbyists and the consultants for big business. Voters may not have given Republicans a majority in the Senate, but they certainly didn't vote for stealth giveaways either. Now, this defense bill will, as usual, be so long and the text released so late that few members will actually read it, and even fewer tally up all the waste. But Breitbart uncovered something disturbing tucked inside it, something called the Journalism Competition and Preservation Act in the National Defense Authorization Act. Now, it will allow media companies, most owned by wealthy conglomerates, to form negotiating cartels to secure special favors from big tech companies, including some financial handouts. And it goes from bad to worse, by the way. The marijuana lobby, thank you, John Boehner, also gets a huge financial boost in the bill. No more government prohibitions on banking and doing business with banks with cannabis-related businesses.
I'm also a co-sponsor of the Safe Banking Act, which would allow financial institutions to offer banking services to legally operated cannabis business without fear of punishment by federal regulators.
Okay. Now, don't for a second think that they hadn't planned this all along. Now, staff on the Hill and at the White House undoubtedly have been working away on all of this nonsense for probably most of the last year. Take what happened last week when French President Emmanuel Macron visited the White House. Who in his right mind actually thinks that the Biden team didn't know what he was going to say in protest about the Made in America provisions in that so-called Inflation Reduction Act? Now, there were certain subsidies that were supposed to be eligible for American companies, or if you had signed a free trade deal with the United States, you'd get subsidies in those two cases. Now, the EU does not qualify. Obviously, it's not an American company, and they don't have a free trade deal with the United States. But the EU still wants the benefits. So when Macron comes over to complain that European exports would be hurt, Biden did not stand up for American workers or American manufacturing. He immediately gave in and agreed that there would be glitches in the bill that would be fixed. By the way, this is the bill that he and the Democrats had just campaigned on.
Make more cars and semiconductors in America. More infrastructure and innovation in America. I believe we can own the future of the automobile market. Detroit is back, America's back. Instead of relying on foreign supply chains, let's make it in America.
He didn't mean that at the time. So now instead of making America great again, we're making France great again. Meanwhile, back on the Hill, the usual suspects in the GOP are trying to pass legislation that you don't want, and again, they didn't campaign on. Fake Republican Senator Tom Tillis, who has always railed against limits on foreign workers, is working with Democrat Kyrsten Sinema to finalize a permanent giveaway to companies who want as much cheap labor as possible. Now, you're supposed to believe that Tillis, out of his deep patriotic concern for the nation, is working overtime to fix our current border woes. The Washington Post lays it on thick, saying, besides protecting 2 million dreamers, the Sinema and Tillis draft would allocate money for border security, the hiring of more officers, and pay raises for agents. Okay, this is a total lie. Biden's DHS could be doing the border enforcement right now. But of course they refuse to, and instead, they're waving in as many illegals into the country as possible. So negotiating with the White House on immigration now is like negotiating with a hostage taker.
Title 42 is lifted on May 23rd. What does success for your plan look like if it works as you intend?
Success looks like the orderly implementation of our plan, where we are applying our laws in accordance with their provisions in a way that respects individuals' rights to claim asylum.
Of course they're acting in bad faith. How else do you describe the actions of officials who actively subvert Title 42, which you may remember allowed for immediate border turnbacks because of the pandemic? Remember, Biden still says we're in a national emergency because of the pandemic. And how many times, by the way, have they all told us that the border is secure? That's the best joke ever. The reality is they want open borders. Period. End of story. The amnesty will come to 2 million dreamers, but that will just be a magnet, and the enforcement never will follow. It will simply mean more illegals lining up along the Rio Grande. Now, just last month, more than 73,000 gotaways, those are illegals who were able to get into the United States without being apprehended, crossed the border. That is the highest number ever recorded. Yeah, definitely do a deal with those guys. So for about 17 years now, the bipartisan establishment has been trying to convince you that we need to weaken our immigration rules even further.
We cannot build a unified country by inciting people to anger, or playing on anyone's fears, or exploiting the issue of immigration for political gain.
It is long past time to reform an immigration system that right now doesn't serve America as well as it should.
The immigration reform is supported by everyone from labor unions to religious leaders to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Let's get it done once and for all.
Now, your humble host has fought against this for most of the last 20 years. I warned the Bush administration what would happen if they didn't follow through on enforcement. And look who's been forced out of politics since. The Bushes, Boehner, Cantor, Liz Cheney, Pat Toomey, and the list goes on and on and on. And this new proposal is no better than any of the others that crashed and burned. In fact, it's the worst because it comes at a time of unprecedented border crashing, and whether we're in a recession now or will be certainly soon, that's terrible. And by the way, real wages are already falling in the United States. It's terrible timing. Now, they know you would vote against it if you could, yet they simply don't care. This cabal that hates the populace and hated the Tea Party knows where these immigration efforts will always end up if they're introduced in the regular legislative session. This is the reason for their hidden ball trick on amnesty right now. They know none of it's popular, that if they had to openly run on it, it probably would have cost them the Senate, the Democrats. So the Democrats are hoping that by the time 2024 rolls around, you'll have forgotten what they did to ram through all this runaway spending, immigration amnesty, eviscerating Made in America, fast-tracking pot use, and insulating the woke Pentagon from scrutiny. But we will not forget, and that is the angle. Joining me now, I'm delighted he's with us, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. Leader McCarthy, great to see you tonight. Now, the issue with Washington in a lame duck session is what, in your estimation?
They try to do exactly what you said. When I listened to this sounded like what I was saying to the president during my meeting last week. The vice president actually brought up, she says, what can we do about the dreamers? I said nothing. You got to secure the border. I invited the president down to go to the border with me, and he made the mistake and asked me, what would I do? I rolled through everything because I was just there in El Paso. You bring that number up of 70,000 in one overpass. In 7 weeks, 70,000 people have come across one overpass. We don't control our border anymore. The cartels do. You can see tracers coming to our National Guard. You can see a lady who didn't pay.
They don't care, though. Let's just
They don't.
abuse everybody. They do not care about this.
No, but they're destroying our nation. Because what is happening down there, you already have 3 million across. If they lift Title 42, just in the next 2 years while he's in office, 13 million more people they project.
You won't be
will come across
speaker
it.
for long if they do that. I'm sorry.
No,
but if
you
they,
can't allow it.
I mean,
Well, I told the president, I was very clear from the very beginning. If he wants the NDAA, I told him, you got to lift the vaccine mandate on our military men and women. Why? They're not meeting the recruitment goals right now because of this. People are leaving.
but why
because
should
of
they
it.
be voting on any of this? Why shouldn't they do continuing resolution, short-term spending until you
Well,
become
that's
speaker?
different. That's appropriations. That's
The
exactly what I said.
NDAA is the extra money they want for the Pentagon,
I want
correct?
the Democrats to vote on this. I want this to go
Yeah.
in law but this is what's going to happen when we're in power. Single subject. People aren't going to be able to throw in pot funding and the others. Right now, that's not in. We're trying to hold all that out in the process.
But
It
are
should
you
just
talking
be
to
about
Mitch
the
McConnell
military.
about this? Because I mean, he's so smart in so many ways. Did all the great judges. But this omnibus thing takes away your power for 10
Exactly.
months. You will have no effect
We're
on these critical
28
issues. Zero.
We're 28 days away from Republicans having the gavel. We would be stronger in every negotiation. So any Republican that's out there trying to work with them is wrong.
So that
Why
includes
would you
Mitch
wait with the
McConnell?
hand
Does
is
that
strong?
include McConnell?
Yes. Why would you want to work on anything if we have the gavel inside Congress?
You just
we
won
have
the
a stronger.
House.
Yes. Wait till we're in charge. I told the president, if we don't have the lifting of the vaccine, I'll do it in January. I told the Secretary of Defense, he had him call me just Sunday night.
But do they kind of know people are moving away from the vaccine mandates? And is that kind of a? I know they said they don't, but because this all be posturing and we're all kind of playing kabuki theater here.
They're not, and we want to
No?
put it in law
Okay.
so they can. Think about it, if we win it here, where we can push it everywhere else.
All right. Speaking of what that meeting with Biden was like, here's the story the president has been telling. They were telling me that what we could do and what they were going to do, and I said, yeah. Biden recalled demonstrating that he responded to McCarthy by lifting up his pen and showing it to the room. They said, "What are you doing? A pen, a veto," he said. Congressman, what's your side of that story?
He didn't say that. He lifted up his pen because I said he was playing politics, and he lifted up his pen and put it down and shut up. And then it came back to talk to me afterwards and say, I wasn't trying to be political, Kevin. I said, you know what you need to do? You need to go to the border with me. Because right now, the fentanyl that is killing our children, or the millions who are coming across, the people who are being human trafficked, I said, you don't understand what's
Well,
happening.
they do understand.
I requested we put the Navy SEALs in with the border agents. They have the border agents being process agents instead of being on the job.
The big question, I've been getting pinged by this all day, is this RNC leadership question, because a lot of Republicans are worried because they think, they're glad they won the House and a couple more seats look like they're picked up. We're going to talk to John Duarte in a minute.
we
But
won in California
who
again.
do you think now should take over as RNC chair? I like Ronna McDaniel a lot personally. I think she's a great person. I like her. Harmeet Dillon is a young
She's from California,
female,
yeah.
California, obviously Indian American.
Look,
What's
I
your
like
thought?
Harmeet. She's my national commitment. I think she does a tremendous job. But I think Ronna did a tremendous job too. Look, when you look across the country,
You don't think we need change?
every Republican entity lost except the House. I've been leader for 4 years. We've won every single time.
What about early voting for those Senate races? She could have helped on that, right?
I've watched her down doing it. The one thing I see happening, the Senate lost, the governors lost, the president lost, but the House has won in both cycles. Even we picked up in California, we picked up in Oregon, we picked up in New York. We won 5 seats that Biden won by more than 10 points. We beat the DCCC chair. That hasn't happened in 42 years. I think the quality of the candidate matters. We could have done better in Pennsylvania with a better governor candidate there. It cost us a thing. But look, I saw the resources there. I saw the engagement in there. And the RNC is a small group of individuals, of committeemen
Yeah.
and committee women. I
I think
they've
it
got to
should
look
be
at that.
decentralized. I mean, she threw out that idea on the show last week that it should be why based in Washington. Send it to the heartland, to the
I
important
think
states.
we should
Break
do
it
that
up.
with everywhere. We should decentralize. We got to get out of Washington. I look at that from a government point of view. Why is the Department of Energy in Washington? What are they producing? Why is the Department of
Horrible.
Education there? Get it out to the American public. Let them understand where
Will we continue to make progress in California? California's just got to turn at some point.
We won in Congress every single cycle. We won in LA. We won 3 seats that Biden has carried by more than 10 points. So you know what? We proved in the House we can win in every single place. The quality of the candidate matters, having the resources and having the right.
So your message again, Tom Tillis, McConnell, hold off.
29 days. Can't you wait? because what will happen then is you'll get a Republican bill out of the House, you'll be in a stronger negotiation position, and we'll be cutting instead of adding more money.
It's great to see you. Thank you so much
Thank
for coming
you.
in tonight. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Leader McCarthy. And Republicans just picked up their 221st House seat, as I just mentioned, in one of the closest races in the country. My next guest, farmer and businessman John Duarte, defeated Newsom-backed Democrat Adam Gray. He won by just 565 votes, but we'll take it. John joins me now for his first interview since the big win. Congressman-elect, congrats. As someone who comes from a district that is hurting,